just 2 dates in, and you come home like you've run an emotional marathon. No one did anything outrageous. No one said anything cutting, and still you feel wrecked. A heavy chest, a loud mind, and a part of you that's absolutely convinced something's not right. You reopen the chat, zoom in on a tiny detail, pause, a shorter reply, a fleeting look, and it feels like you can sense what they're not saying. The problem is, you don't know if that's real intuition or an old wound getting touched. A lot of people call that being an empath. And when it happens a lot, your mind starts drifting into the spiritual. Do I have spiritual abilities? Am I picking up someone's energy? Let me be clear, this video isn't here to prove you have superpowers. And I'm not diagnosing anything. I'm talking about the experiences many empaths label as spiritual abilities, and how Carl Jung helps you use them correctly, so that they become clarity, not something that burns you from the inside. Because the issue isn't that you can feel, the issue is that you turn what you feel into love. You turn signals into destiny, vibrations into promises, and then you live according to it. Through a Jungian lens, this kind of sensitivity often travels with 4 things. Persona, the mask of, I have to be nice. I shouldn't bother anyone. I have to understand them. Shadow, the parts you push down. Anger, the need to be chosen, the fear of being left. Projection, you think you're reading them, but you're actually projecting your own material onto them. And complexan, unconscious trigger. One tiny detail can pull a massive reaction. In the end, what exhausts you isn't that you feel deeply, but that you get dragged into a story written too fast. Empaths don't suffer because they're sensitive. They suffer because a complex hijacks the steering wheel. It turns a signal into a story, and then you live inside that story as if it's the truth. Now, let's talk about the ability number on what many empaths call reading the emotional field. It can be a gift that helps you see clearly, or it can become a trap where you carry other people's feelings home like a backpack full of stones. Ability number 1 isn't mind reading, it's reading the air, and when you use it wrong, you'll be exhausted before love even has a chance to begin. Here's a moment you probably know. You leave a date. No one did anything wrong. Nothing sounded harsh. They were even polite maybe. And yet, the second you step out of that space, your body shifts. Your chest feels a little heavier. Your mind gets louder, and you get that vague sense something is off. The scary part isn't that you can feel something. The scary part is that you start living according to what you feel, as if it's already confirmed truth. There's a thin line here that, if you don't see it, will turn you into a container for other people's emotions. You can notice what they feel without carrying it inside your body. Perceive means you recognize. Absorb means you merge. Recognition brings clarity. Merging burns you out. You see it in something small. Second date. You get home and send a light message like, I had a good time today. And then silence. 1 hour, 2, 3. You open the chat window, and your fingers start moving on their own. Type, delete, type, delete. From the outside, people call it overthinking. But inside you, it doesn't feel like thinking. It feels like an urge. You're not reading the message anymore, you're reading the emptiness. And that emptiness becomes the place where an old voice in you speaks. I probably said something wrong. They're bored. I'm not enough. In Jung's language, that's a complex getting triggered, especially the fear of abandonment. It pulls you into a familiar role, the persona of, I need to be nice, I need to be easy, I need to keep everything smooth. So you think you're using intuition, but what you're actually doing is trying to buy safety back. Here's one subtle difference I want you to remember. Intuition is usually quiet and clean, like a small period inside your body. Absorption mixed with anxiety is urgent and repetitive. It doesn't let you breathe. It rushes you to do something right now, and no matter what you do, it still isn't satisfied. So I'm not going to tell you, don't text as a power move. I'm also not turning texting into a competition. What empaths need isn't more strategy. What empaths need is the right to write their own story again. Other people's emotions can pass through, but they don't get to sit down and hold the pen for your life. The practice here is a 2-page journal. So when you get activated, you don't get swept away. You stay with reality. Imagine a notebook with 2 worlds. Page 1 is the mirror page. It reflects what's real, cold, and clear, like a security camera. You write actual facts. I texted at 9:12. It's been 3 hours with no reply. I feel the urge to text again. That's it. No, they're ghosting. No, they're doing it on purpose. No, turning silence into a verdict. The mirror page doesn't tell a story, it just reflects. Page 2 is the dark page, the place where the softest, most afraid part of you gets to speak without performing, I'm fine. You write the story of a movie in your head as honestly as possible. I'm afraid of being left. I'm afraid I'm not enough. I want to text again so I can breathe. That's shadow work at its most basic. Not killing the fear, but naming it. It stops disguising itself as intuition and driving your life. When you name what's speaking inside you, it loses power. And right after you write both pages, you do one thing. Like setting the notebook down on the table, you give it time. The 12-hour rule. For the next 12 hours, you do not make decisions based on the dark page. You don't send another message just to put out the fire in your chest. You don't reread the chat hunting for one detail that makes you feel less scared. You do what empaths forget most. You return to baseline. Eat something, shower, walk, work, sleep. This isn't punishment. It's space for your nervous system so your clear-minded self can come back online. And when you're calmer, you still need clarity. You act from the mirror page. Short, clean, not begging. I like clear communication. If you're busy, one sentence is enough. You're not asking for love. You're setting conditions so love can exist without you abandoning yourself. When you do this ability correctly, a strong shift happens. You start noticing things you couldn't see before, because you used to carry everyone's emotions home. You realize that sometimes I feel them pulling away is actually my abandonment wound is getting touched. And there's something even more sobering. One silence, one scene without reply, can be enough for your mind to build an entire movie 99% when the real data is 1%. It can feel like intuition. It can feel spiritual. But sometimes it's anxiety wearing intuition's clothes. And once you can separate 1% signal from a 99% movie, you stop getting dragged around by the air. You start seeing patterns faster and clearer without hypnotizing yourself with stories. In the next part, I'm going to break down that mechanism, why one tiny detail can trigger a whole film in an empath's mind, and how to keep a signal at its real size before it turns into destiny. Have you noticed this? Sometimes it's just one tiny ripple light as a fingertip touching water, and a few minutes later, inside you, it's a storm. So let me leave a question here like an unbuttoned button. If you could keep that ripple at its real size, instead of turning it into a hurricane in your head, would you confuse fear with intuition less often and stop treating uncertainty like the enemy? Ability number 2 is like a frequency scanner. Other people hear the words. You hear the pulse behind the words. You can sense the thinnest misalignment, a reply that's half a beat late, warmth today that's slightly different from yesterday, a soft dodge that falls like a leaf. And in a world where everything happens through screens, where words arrive as notifications, a scanner can easily run on overload. We're living in a culture of ambiguity, Everyone's busy, everyone has options, and everyone's afraid that being clear means losing leverage. And in that empty space, empaths are often the first to hear the noise. Here's the familiar scene. You've met a few times. It's still unnamed promises, just feeling. Then something small happens. Not a shock, just a slight tilt. They say they'll call but don't say when. Replies get shorter. A simple question gets brushed past. Your body catches it before your mind does. Your stomach drops for 1 second, like someone tapped a glass. If you stop there, it's just a tiny ting that says, "We need more light." But usually right after that thing, your head turns into a movie projector in a dark theater. It adds music. It cuts scenes. It shows you the trailer. They change their mind. They're bored. They have someone else. I'm about to be left. I'm not enough. And then you start working hard in the most exhausting way, collecting details like shards of glass, punctuation, online times, stories, silences. Not because you're curious, because you can't stand floating. In Jung's language, the shadow part of you doesn't show up saying, "I'm scared." It shows up saying something that sounds more elevated. I know. Using this ability correctly doesn't mean turning off sensitivity. It means changing how you hold it. You stop letting one thing become an entire symphony. You learn to keep one grain of sand instead of dumping a whole desert on your chest. Here's the rule. What's real is usually small. What drains you usually swell. The ripple is real. The wave you create can be a survival habit. The exercise is short, like turning on a flashlight in a dark room. The moment you hear the ting, you do 2 things. First, put the ripple on the table with 1 clean sentence, like a camera recording. They said they'd call, but didn't set a time. The texting rhythm changed this week. They avoided a question about what they're looking for. That's it. No verdict, no prophecy. Second, ask 1 question to verify, like opening a window instead of suffocating in the room. Just so I'm clear, are you looking for something serious or do you want to keep it casual? Or, what communication rhythm feels comfortable for you? 1 question, calm tone. This question isn't to keep them. It's so you don't trade your peace for an internal movie. There's something subtle here, especially now. We're trained to read between the lines more than we're trained to write 1 line clearly. Everyone's afraid of looking needy, afraid of being judged, afraid of losing face. But the better you are at reading between the lines, the easier it is to get stuck inside lines that never get written. A verifying question doesn't make you weak. It makes it clear. It returns you to reality, where love, if it's real, has to survive under the light, not just sparkle in the dark. And then something strange happens when you do this enough. Your head gets quieter, but your inner eyes get sharper. You don't just hear the ripple. You start seeing hairline cracks behind someone's smile, a familiar avoidance pattern, a need hiding under calmness. That can feel like a gift because you understand them. But this is where many empaths slip into the next trap. From "I noticed" to "it's my job." You start asking, almost unconsciously, if I can see it, am I allowed to leave? If I leave, am I cruel? And if I stay, is that love, or am I trading the role of the one who understands everything for permission to be close? There's a refined trap right behind empathy. You can turn seeing into a chain and call that chain by a beautiful name. In the next part, I'm taking you straight into that trap because seeing was never the problem. The problem is what you do with what you see and who pays for it. In an era where everyone talks about trauma, everyone has a story to tell. Empaths often get stuck right here. I can see their pain, so am I allowed to walk away? Or do I have to prove I'm deep enough to stay? Ability number 3 is shadow detection. You see someone's wounds faster, sometimes faster than they do. And this is where many empaths get lost. Because once you see the reason behind their behavior, you turn that reason into a permission slip. You stay a little longer, you tolerate a little more, you explain a little more, like understanding the origin of the shadow automatically makes it safe. But the claim I want you to hold tightly is this. Seeing someone's wound does not create an obligation to heal them, and understanding why they are the way they are does not make them safe to love. That's the line between compassion and self-abandonment. Let me say something that might sting. There are people in dating who don't love you. They love the healer's role you're playing, and empaths are good at that role. You listen well, you're soft, you're sensitive, you can sense what's unspoken, you're patient. Through Jung's lens, that can be a very praised persona. I'm mature, I can handle it, I don't demand much, I'll stay when others leave. The more it's rewarded, the stronger it gets. But right behind that beautiful persona is your own shadow. The need to be needed, to be chosen, to be seen as special, to beat the fear of being left by becoming the person no one can leave because you saved them. When the rescuer persona takes the wheel, you're not just feeling them anymore. You're investing in a project. Fix them, wait for them, lift them up. And because it's wrapped in the language of love, it's hard to spot. Here's a common dating pattern. You meet someone magnetic, deep, sometimes warm. They share pieces that soften you and unsafe childhood. Betrayal. I have a hard time trusting people. You hear it and something in you melts. Poor thing. Then the pattern tilts. Warm today, silent tomorrow. Plans were made and canceled at the last minute. I like you, but no clear plans. Close then far, and when you ask for clarity, they call you too intense, too fast, too demanding. And because you saw trauma, you start translating red flags into healing language. They don't mean it. They're afraid of getting hurt. They avoid because they've been through a lot. If I'm patient, they'll open up. The trap is, you're using shadow detection to justify inconsistency. You stop judging behavior by safety standards. You judge it by biography. And then you do the most empathetic thing. You pay the price for them. You carry ambiguity so they don't have to take responsibility. You swallow feeling dismissed so they don't have to face intimacy. You shrink your needs so they don't feel pressure. It sounds like love, but in Jung's terms, this is projection and complex shaking hands. You project potential onto, and you fall in love with the potential. And your abandonment complex whispers, stay, because if you leave, you're the bad one. You're not deep enough. You think you're saving them, but often you're saving a part of you from the feeling of being left. So what does using this ability correctly look like? You still see shadow, but you don't turn it into a mission. You see it for discernment, to choose boundaries, to choose pacing, to keep yourself safe. You can feel compassion and still refuse to enter someone's danger zone. You can understand their pain and still say, I need consistency. Now I want to give you a tiny check that's brutally real. 3 questions, yes/no. I call it the rescuer check. 1. If today they had no trauma story for you to understand, only their present behavior, would you still choose them? 2. In the last 14 days, have you been justifying things that, if your best friend experienced them, you'd say, don't accept that? Last-minute cancellations, disappearing, saying one thing and doing another. 3. When you imagine leaving, what's louder? This isn't safe / this isn't aligned. Or, I feel sorry for them, I'm afraid they'll collapse, I'm afraid I'm cruel. If number 3 leans more toward pity than safety, you're likely in the rescuer persona, not love. If you answer yes to at least 2 questions, your job this week isn't to understand them more. Your job is to set one small, measurable boundary, a plan confirmed with time and place. a minimum communication rhythm, or one clear sentence about what you need. Because without boundaries, shadow detection turns you into a place where other people dump their darkness and then walk away feeling lighter. Here's the shift that changes how you date. In dating, the other person's shadow isn't as dangerous as you getting used to living inside it. The better you are at seeing wounds, the easier it is to get addicted to the feeling, I'm the only one who understands them. And when you're addicted to that role, you miss the clearest signal. The right person doesn't make you sacrifice safety to prove kindness. The right person doesn't need you to save them in order to love you. And only when you stop being the healer, you get to switch your attunement on and off instead of leaving it on all day and collapsing. Next, I'll show you how to return to baseline fast so you can feel deeply without losing yourself. Have you noticed this empath paradox? You just stop being the healer. You promised yourself, this time I'll be clear. I'll hold boundaries. And then one short message, or one disappearing afternoon, and your entire nervous system automatically attunes to them, like you're living inside their heartbeat, not yours. Ability number 4 is energetic resonance. In a gentle spiritual sense, it's like you pick up their emotional frequency and unconsciously tune to it. In Jung's language, it's very human. You're sensitive to micro signals, and your persona mask of be nice, be available, don't bother anyone, when it combines with the fear of abandonment complex, turns sensitivity into constant surveillance. If you remember one sentence, remember this: resonance isn't bad. What's bad is resonance without choice. When you can't choose on/off, it looks like love, but it's actually losing baseline. You see it most in early dating. Nothing has a name yet, so everything can become a sign. You've met 2 or 3 times, but at night you can't rest. You replay every moment. What did that laugh mean? Why did they pause? Did that look get colder when we paid? You reopen the chat not to read words, but to measure heat, fast or slow replies, cold punctuation, fewer emojis, and your body reacts before logic does. Every notification makes your heart jump. Every lack of notification makes your stomach drop. The phone becomes a self-worth meter. You start losing your baseline normal ground of your own life, like you can't hear your real rhythm anymore, only their yes/no rhythm. Jung helps here because he doesn't tell you, don't be sensitive. He asks, who is driving? When you're attuned like this, it's usually not a mystical intuition. It's persona plus shadow making a quiet deal. Persona says, be ready. Don't demand. Don't miss your chance. Shadow says, I'm afraid of being left. I'm afraid I won't be chosen. The complex hears that and turns resonance into hypervigilance. If I track closely enough, I can control uncertainty. So you tune to them all day, all night, until you can't even tell whose emotion this is. You say, I can feel them pulling away. But sometimes the truth is, you're feeling your own nervous system in alarm. So what does using this ability correctly look like? You keep resonating because it is a gift, but you need a switch. The switch isn't being cold. The switch is returning to baseline quickly, so you don't make relationship decisions from a body in panic. Here's a 90-second practice. Do it the moment you feel a spike. Your heart jumps with a notification. Your mind starts replaying. Your hand wants to text again just to breathe. Return to baseline in 90 seconds. 3 steps, body-based. Because baseline doesn't live in thinking it through. It lives in your nervous system. Step 1. Breathe. Nothing fancy. Just lengthen the exhale. Inhale 4 seconds. Exhale 6 to 8 seconds. 3 rounds. The point is, a longer exhale tells your body, no real danger right now. Step 2. Feet. Put both feet on the floor. Feel 3 points: heel, outer edge, and big toe. Press down gently like you're grounding a steak. You're not meditating, you're pulling attention off the screen and back to the earth. Step 3. The theirs/mine sentence. Say it silently, firmly. This is theirs. This is mine. Then name it clearly. Their silence/reply rhythm is theirs. My fear of being left rising up is mine. The goal isn't to decide who's right or wrong. The goal is to stop mixing two things into one pot. Because when you mix them, you call your panic intuition, and you call their avoidance love testing you. After 90 seconds, ask one Jung question. What do I want to do right now to reduce anxiety, and what would increase truth? If it's to reduce anxiety, text again, check stories, and monitor online pause. Give yourself 15 minutes. Return to your life. Eat, shower, work, talk to a friend, write a few lines. This is where empaths often misread themselves. You think you're following love, but you're following an addiction to anxiety relief. And if after baseline, you still need clarity, you speak from baseline to spike. You don't text to ask for peace back. You text to set a rhythm you can actually live with. This may sound harsh, but many empaths learn it the hard way. If you don't have a baseline, you can be controlled by anyone who creates spikes in you, good or bad. They appear and disappear in the right rhythm, and your nervous system tunes to them like an addictive song. And then empaths don't just lose energy, they lose freedom. But when you can return to baseline, something strange happens. You can still see many layers in the other person, but you're no longer compelled to explain everything or prove you know. You start realizing some things are enough to see without exposing them, and that brings us to the final ability. You see many layers, and the lesson isn't to talk more, it's to set better boundaries. If there's still a tiny question rubbing against your heart, so where is an empath actually strongest? I want to open one last door. There's an ability that isn't loud, isn't flashy, but once you recognize it, you won't be pulled around as easily by half answers. Dimensional perception ability to see multiple layers of a situation at the same time. You don't just feel the other person's emotion. You sense the layer behind what they say. The motive, the fear, the avoidance, and the cost you pay when you keep trying to understand for them. And because you can see that many layers, mature empaths often speak less. Not because they're weak, but because they understand. The more you explain, the more you get dragged into a reality that isn't yours. Jung would say this is the moment you stop identifying with the healer, and you look straight at your own shadow, the need to be needed, the addiction to hope, and the illusion that if you're subtle enough, everything will finally become safe. Here's a very ordinary example that drains empaths the most. Someone who keeps texting, "I'm busy," vague, close, then far. Never clear what busy means, how long, or what the relationship rhythm is. They keep you in a permanent waiting room. Dimensional perception doesn't force you to expose them or play detective. It simply shows you two layers at once. Layer 1, they might genuinely be busy. Layer 2, I'm being placed into a relationship rhythm where I'm not prioritized. When you can see that, you don't have to accuse. You don't have to unmask. You set a standard. You don't say, "You're lying." You don't say, "You don't respect me." You speak about the structure you will accept, and then you let behavior answer, not promises. If you need one sentence to save yourself from the loop of, "It's fine, I'll understand one more time," choose a quiet moment, take a breath, say one sentence, then stop. No extra explanation. I respect that you're busy, but I only continue when there's clarity and consistency. If you're not ready for that, we stop here. One sentence, no sermon. No, I understand, it's okay. No proving you're worthy. Because the moment you start arguing for basic respect, you've returned to the shadow, asking permission to have a place. Before we close, here are 3 principles for using this ability correctly, which don't turn you into someone who carries everything. Principle 1. Seeing many layers doesn't mean holding them all. You get to choose one layer to live in, the layer with boundaries and truth. Principle 2. Intuition is only a signal. Standards are the decision. Don't use intuition to rationalize inconsistency. Principle 3. Say less, clarify with action. One boundary sentence, one observation cycle, and if it repeats, you pull your energy back. Not to punish, but to respect yourself. And this is where many empaths get hit in the chest. Sometimes you're not afraid they'll leave. You're afraid you'll see clearly, and then you'll have to leave. Because when you see multiple layers, you also see a cold truth. Some people want you there to soothe them, not to build something clear with you. If you're brave enough to stay quiet after you set a boundary, you'll hear the real answer. Not what they say, but what they do next. If you want the next comeback episode, go deeper. Why empaths get pulled toward ambiguous people, what shadow mechanism is running the loop, and how to escape just a little more hope. Comment one word, come back. And if you want this series to go further, subscribe so I can keep building empath shadow work the Jung way. No sugarcoating, no blame, just giving you your power back in the right place. Thank you for staying with me to the end. Let me close with one sentence. When you can see in dimensions, you don't have to shout to be understood. You just have to stand within the right boundary so life reveals the truth.